DTX Equals, where thought leaders in digital therapeutics put a stake in the ground about what makes DTX DTX. With me today is Anish Shindore, formerly of Biogen and Sanofi, now managing partner of GSD Health and an investor in digital therapeutics. Anish, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So I think my life sciences career has been published quite a bit, but in short, I like to work on the convergence point of science and technology. That's where I've been thriving the most within health tech and biopharma partnerships. After a really good run in pharma and with a lot of respect to all that I learned at the pharmaceutical companies that I worked for, now I have a small boutique consulting company which basically provided services to startups, to investors, and to pharmaceutical companies who want to or who wish to know more about digital health, digital therapeutics, and helping them, hand-holding them actually, and bringing them onto this journey. So that's what I try to do, and yeah, I'm really happy to be here with Acacia.
I'm excited to dig in. Let's do it. So, first up, what's a formative event in your life or career that influenced your path into DTX?
I think a lot of things happened by chance, right? I was at Sanofi, and through organizational changes, things happened. But at the same time, I think what really pushed the agenda on the digital therapeutics for me was having a really fancy title at a big pharmaceutical company, and COVID hit, and I felt useless at home, literally. And that kind of pushed a little bit like, okay, what am I really doing over here? Because as soon as things shut down, you're left in a question mark mode of how can you now add value from a society perspective, community perspective, and also for the company that's actually paying my check. So that became a little bit of a low point, but at also a very high point where I was like, okay, if there is so much that technology is teaching us, why can't actually invest yourself a little bit more through resources, through finances, through time, and through energy, and see how we can do it. And that March of 2020 was the moment when everything was shutting down that pushed me to go a little bit deeper into what digital therapeutics is and how I could support it.
So, you have the unique ability to speak from the pharma perspective because you spent a lot of time there, but also from the perspective of an investor and also from the perspective of somebody who's consulting on the commercial side. So, from those, any combination of those three things to you, like DTX equals what? Like, what is the most defining issue in DTX today?
Um, I think we haven't arrived at the point where, personally, and again, there's branding associated with DTX equals, but in order for DTX to be equal, a lot of things need to happen, right? So when I look at digital therapeutics, today we have at least positive speculation of technology being potentially a cure solution for individuals, but that has not resonated across all areas of healthcare today. You look into Ministry of Health or you look into policymakers, policy designers, that sentiment hasn't stuck in yet. Remote patient monitoring, on the other hand, I think has got a little bit of boost over the last years. But DTX equals for me would be we stop talking about digital therapeutics in general. We start talking about therapeutics that include technology as a component that has an endpoint that is curing a patient or actually helping them throughout their journey. That would be for me that moment where we start saying like, okay, DTX is equal, but again, without saying DTX, of course. So it should be a therapeutic outcome that we should be looking into rather than delving too much on the terminologies that we use today.
No, that's true. And it's interesting because, at least on my side, I've been doing a lot of work in medical device more generally and discovering there are a lot of things that, are
Absolutely.
happening and you could call them a DTX, but nobody is. And there are reasons why sometimes you don't want to call what you're doing a DTX. So it's an
Absolutely.
interesting concept. There's all kinds of stuff out there that, could be under that umbrella and may or may not want to be
And look
under
at
that umbrella.
France, right? What has France done with their regulatory pathway? They've chosen very smart wording, calling it digital medical devices rather than going into therapeutic devices or anything else, because they see it as almost like a crawl, walk, run approach. That let's introduce, everybody knows about medical devices, everybody knows the usage and application of medical devices. Now, and for the ones who are in the field, we know there is a digital component to it already, but making sure that that kind of technology is now available on your smartphone on a consumer device is what is the big step that they're making, but simplifying the wording how they use it. So their version of including something that could be a therapeutic or can have a therapeutic outcome is just by flipping a word and saying, oh, this is a digital medical device. That means it can be in a very consumer oriented scenario as well.
So, do you think some of these issues that the field of digital therapeutics has been having around adoption in healthcare settings has to do not with the products, but with the lingo or like kind of the way people are talking about it? Or is it both?
I think it's the lack of communicating enough to um, let's say treatment decision makers and educating them on what exactly these solutions can do, right? Now, and I'm going to use a very silly example, and maybe potentially an irrelevant one, but you look into women's health and you look into the usage of apps and solution that gynecologists have. It You see a big generation gap in people who are prescribing some of these solutions by their own will. There's no prescription solution within the gynecology space, but they are recommending certain solutions to women who want to use that. Now, on digital therapeutic side, there is no natural or organic way where education has been coming to some parts of the healthcare system. Let that be the prescribers, let that be the decision makers over there. In the past, if you look into it, right, and we can cut the cake in many different pieces. If we look into policymakers, initially, any treatment advancement that would happen, let's say a pharmaceutical company is taking that, that would be communicated by a specific team of medical experts that would educate
Hmm.
the system about it. When it gets to commercialization, that message is hammered even more at scale on the outcomes that were generated through that clinical trials, which potentially changes behavior or gives a perspective. If that doesn't happen, then there's continuous medical education that is put in place in order to refresh some of these learnings. Now, that's a big investment that happens through publicly traded organization for a specific purpose. If you look at digital therapeutics, and you can look at the example with DIGA, right? What happened with DIGA? Perfect regulatory pathway, great opportunity for reimbursement of your solutions, and even on the data side of things, they put some sort of a framework in place. But one of the issues that they found out was the last mile when it comes to actually prescribing this information, there was no knowledge on the field. So the decision maker on that prescription had no, first, education on it, second, no incentive on it. But on the other side, we are not managing things the same way. So we cannot say that we are on a train, but at the same time, the rail lines, they are not at the same of the same size. We are doing different things for different areas, and for DTX, we are not making that effort. Unfortunately, we are trained in a way, or we've created a society in a way where we have to go through similar processes to make that education available. So I think that is yeah, that is my point of view on it. But I do think there are some companies who are investing in education of these things. Again, you look at FDA, there's a lot of policy being put out, but actually how many solutions go through an FDA approval, or those things, that's a big question mark, right? Everybody wants to enter the US market, at least from the European side of things, but how many of them are
I
actually
know.
going through that pathway?
What's up with that, Anish? Like, can you explain
Exactly.
that to me? Because I would say in the last, I don't know, 6 to 9 months, nearly everybody that I have been talking to is somebody
Yeah.
coming from Europe to the United States. Like, what happened there?
So I think it's that syndrome of whatever, the grass is greener on the other side, or in this case, the grass is greener on the other side of the ocean, and it's not true, right? Because they feel so. There's a lot of other things that have influenced this to happen. So first of all, let's go back 2020, right? Germany passes the law. Everybody's excited that we're going to go. Everybody's market access strategy in Europe became, we're going to launch in Germany. Excellent. What happened? Adoption low, prescription low, and then they were like, okay, let's move into different markets. Let's go to NHS because they are now reimbursing some of the digital therapeutic activities. So A shout out to Gavin and those guys who are helping on the market access piece. They've actually figured out what that process would be. How do you actually work with NICE in order to have the guidelines correctly, and then go for the reimbursement route. But slowly, investors started seeing that, hey, you know what? We thought you're going to be not only revenue making, but this is going to be a big thing, and regulation would have caught up. So the best way a health tech company could show that they are growing and they are going to be going into bigger markets, making bigger money, is by saying, hey, you know what? We need to expand to US because that's where the money is, without even understanding how complex US is, right? How are you going to talk to so many payers? How are you going to work with so many health systems? So I personally think uh, it's a way of startups to find a way of survival by giving investors the view that they're going to be this company is going to be successful only if we go to US. So that's where you see a lot of, and because of the private equity market right now, the only way you are able to raise money is not by showing that you have better science or better tech. Everybody's asking for, show me where that this somebody's actually going to be paying for this solution. And the only way to do that is geographical expansion. That's one of the reasons why you see a lot of move coming to US, but it is uneducated move, in my opinion. People are moving too fast without realizing that, hey, you know what? A seed round in US, a seed round in Europe could be of 1.2 million. A seed round in US is normally 6 to 7 million, because the cost of creating anything for that market is really high. Or you are going for commercialization phase. People are not making decisions consciously by actually learning what that market specific is. So that's where you see a lot of things that will decline, Akasha. But what I hope is going to happen is people start formulating really robust and mature business plans to understand how different markets work differently and the kind of resource allocation would happen. So I said a lot of things, but these are the couple of, let's say, dimensions that I see the reason why a lot of European companies are going towards US.
It's interesting because like kind of tying back to the theme of, you know, actually talking to and educating the people you want to be prescribing and utilizing a product. I see that on the user side as well with individual patients. It's like I don't know. In the beginning, people were like, "Ah, this sounds good for patients. Why don't we just do it?" And I think
Yeah,
now, we're starting to see that investors have wised up or have changed. Maybe now they're different people investing that have more knowledge in healthcare. I don't really know, but
yeah,
it seems like talk to the people you want to use your
yeah.
product is a central theme of a lot of this.
No,
Uh,
absolutely.
if
I
they're
think
not
I
going to
think
use it, what's the point?
exactly, and I think the whole trend on uh, anybody. So the trend now is that any solution that you have, if you mention LLM or prompt interface or chat GPT in it, that's how. And I know I won't say the name of the VC, but they literally play bingo on how many times these words are repeated,
uh,
AI and stuff like that.
I
And
want
they're
to hang
like,
with
okay,
those guys.
so I will introduce you to them. But so they it's unfortunately, and I feel bad to say it, because it became a joke on anybody and everybody positioning them as a digital therapeutic company to raise that extra dollar amount, or to have a different kind of a kind of evaluation, which was very sad. And that's where a lot of people got disappointed, derailed, and deceived as well in this whole thing, right? So I think from an investor perspective, what's happening is uh, people are reaching out. So one of the things that happens quite a bit, which I was really surprised on, is investors started reaching out. They're like, "Hey, I have these portfolio of companies that I've invested in. Majority of those are telling me now that their business model is going via biopharma." And I was like, "Okay, well, tell me more, right? What's going on over there?" And and as soon as they start introducing me to some of their portfolio companies, you start realizing that it was never a digital therapeutic company to begin with. It could be a great companion solution and things like that, but not a digital therapeutic for sure. So I was like, then I start questioning. I was like, okay, what was the reason why you invested in the first place? And again, it goes back to a little bit on misguidance on what a therapeutic is, since there is, I mean, of course, DTA has coined some of the definitions, has pushed that out, but you don't see those definitions in any kind of a medical dictionary or lexicon or something. Everybody has an interpretation of what that digital therapeutic would mean. So I think they were misguided on those things, but they're becoming, most of the investors are becoming sharper on decision making. I don't think so they are sharp enough to understand what commercialization tactics could be put in place. And second, if a company is commercializing, to have a little bit more faith to see that, okay, let's support these companies. And it's unfortunately giving the negative effect where there is so much mistrust in the companies who are even doing well, that investors are not funding those companies now, because of the because and I would be the first person to blame myself, because I'm part of the market who creates these definitions, who was able to sign some of these deals and also represent these companies. But we haven't done a very smart and a good job on preparing the market for that.
So, with that, in your wildest dreams, what's something DTX will be able to do in the future that it can't do today, other than get reimbursed?
uh, I would love, so look, I moved to Andorra, which is a really small tiny country which most of the people don't even know, and the reason why they know it is if they've come here for skiing or cycling, right? Other than that, you don't really know Andorra. My wildest dream, but it's it's surprising how far behind they are, even if they are in Western Europe. My wildest dream would be that unfortunately, I go for a doctor's visit and they find out something, and the first preference of treatment for them instead of a pill would be a digital therapeutic for me. That would be and it's a very functional kind of a dream. It's not the blue sky scenario that most of the people would think and talk about. But the most functional thing for me would be, on the other side, somebody says, "Hey, before we put you on a pill, why don't you try this solution? See if it works. If it doesn't, it will at least give us the data that is required for you to put you on a specific therapy that may potentially work." That would be that scenario for Mitch, where I would feel really happy and sad at the same time. Happy because they're prescribing me a digital therapeutic, sad because they have to prescribe me a digital therapeutic.
Well, and I think like baked into that vision is this idea that, there are probably digital solutions for anything
Yeah,
already, but do they work?
absolutely.
Right? So it's like that sort of to have that level of patient and physician trust in the digital products where they would be the frontline
Yeah,
treatment, right? So it's like there's a dream of accessibility to patients, but there's also a dream of those patients being able to trust that thing is going to help them or has a chance of helping them, and the trust that the
yeah,
doctor would be willing to give it to a patient. We have a ways to go, but I
yeah,
agree that, I mean, that will happen. It's just a question of how long it
exactly.
will take us to get there.
Absolutely. No, but what you mentioned is interesting, but at the same time, how do we define trust in healthcare, right? It's I mean, look, pharmaceutical companies have been manufacturing at a certain stage in time, researching and creating, bringing new molecules to the market. If we go out on the street right now, you will still have a 50-50 hit on if they trust that or they don't trust that, right?
Hmm.
So for me, I think trust is this loaded gun, which everybody decides to use it the way they want to. The guardrails that have been put, let's say, at least on the European side and also within FDA, is the way we dissect trust is, let's make sure that the solution that is created is safe for everyone, and that's where MDR comes into play, right? Let's make sure that your data is not getting sabotaged or used against you in certain way. That's where some of the GDPR and the European health data space policies come into play. Consents and the right to withdrawal of all the information and things like that. This is how our society is, or our system is, using trust in order to bake trust into our minds, right? Um, has that helped in any way? I don't think so. I don't think so. It is, for me, the hygiene factor that needs to be put in place in order to ensure that you put anything and everything that is tested for individuals that has a claim that it's going to cure you or move you from A to B in your treatment journey. But trust, I think we still believe in the human aspect of things, where an individual who has tested it, bought into that idea, is now advocating it and making sure that more people try it at least and gain that experience. That human level of advocacy hasn't happened yet. So yes, digital therapeutics, look, I'm all for it. We need to make that effort on the human side as well, so that it translates very well into how this can be accomplished, right?
Well said. And we're out of time. So thank you very much,
Wow,
Anish. I know I told you we would talk a lot
I
and it would
could
go
go on.
fast. I know, me too. And we shall in another venue.
Absolutely,
Thanks
absolutely.
for listening, everyone. This has been DTX Equals, and we're out.